Hello, everyone. I'm Lana Zak. Thank you for joining our CBSN special, A Nation in Need, a Stimulus Checklist. We've been following weeks of negotiations over the next relief bill, but as we chase the political debate, millions of Americans are suffering, struggling just to get by. The latest report from the Labor Department puts the unemployment rate at 7.9%. And as we'll show you in just a moment, some people have been laid off twice since the pandemic began. Tonight, we'll explore what's needed to keep the U.S. economy afloat and what everyday Americans seek from the next stimulus. Joining us now to help sort through what is really a complicated topic is Lisa Cook. She's a professor of economics at Michigan State University and a former senior economist at the President's Council of Economic Advisors. Professor Cook, welcome. So these stimulus packages involve billions, if not trillions of dollars. Can you help us explain how stimulus programs like this work and how the government can afford them?
They work in different ways. Obviously, if you're talking about packages, it really depends on what's being delivered in that package. If there are direct payments, federal payments in that package, or if there are benefits, extraordinary unemployment benefits in the package. But it seems to me that it is high time that we do something different, that we have automatic stabilizers that kick in when there is a decline in economic activity. And I think that's what should be done for the future, for the next pandemic or for the next recession. We need to have a lot more automatic stabilizers in place. So I think that that's the way they should work. Any kind of money that goes to the American public, to small businesses, I think that we should have something already in place, because this wrangling is just unconscionable for American households and American businesses that are sitting on the sidelines and suffering.
Mm-hmm. People are so frustrated hearing all of the politicians say, we know you need a stimulus, we know you need these programs, we just can't decide on the details. So if a stimulus program can provide an economic boost in the short term, talk to us a little bit about the long-term implications. Republicans argue that this could ultimately end up hurting taxpayers. Are they right?
Well, it depends on what's in the stimulus package. What I would suggest be in any stimulus package would be an investment in long-run growth. And I think that's the way, at least what I'm hearing from the Biden camp, that's the way they're thinking about their answer to this recession. But if we're not thinking about the long-term health of the country, if we're not thinking about investment in children, in parents, in households, in the elderly, in infrastructure, then we're not thinking about the country. And certainly, you're asking, how could we afford it? I would ask another question. How could we afford that tax cut that we saw in 2017 that only benefited a small share of Americans and didn't trickle down to the rest of us? That was not an investment in long-run growth. That wound up being an investment in stock buybacks. So I think that there's another way to do things, something that is much more broad-based and something that will help more American households and more small businesses. And I think the risk of not helping the small businesses, for example, would be that some of our best innovation, newest innovation, comes from the smallest, newest firms. And if they didn't have access to PPP, and it would be likely that they didn't have relationships with large banks in place, then we've lost out on long-run economic growth, because that's where innovation goes into the long-run economic growth and raising our living standards. So I think if we're asking, can we afford it? The question is, can we afford not to do it? We're seeing women fall out of the labor force in numbers that we haven't seen recently, since 1989. women's labor force participation is falling dramatically. We'll have a generation of children if we don't take care of this virus and control the virus. We're going to see a generation of children who've lost out on education. And what about those who are marginal or they're in the 7th grade and it's really hard to keep kids in certain grades? It's going to be devastating to not only those families, but to the economy to have students who have not achieved what they could have. And this could have been prevented by having a much more coordinated national strategy. So I think the
it's interesting
right question
hearing. I was saying it's interesting hearing those arguments that we so often hear made on a humanitarian appealing to us as a society to do better, being made from an economist perspective that is not merely helping people in the short term, but also the long-term economic health of our country is dependent on it. Which leads me to another question as we're looking into this current economic situation, which many people have said is unprecedented. There still are some parallels to history. I'm wondering how this current situation and the government's response compares to the recession in the late 2000s.
I appreciate that question, and I am dismayed at the answer. Certainly, when I was on the Obama-Biden transition team, I saw how our economy was being wrecked. And we got one stimulus package passed, and then we needed something that was much larger to help a vibrant, robust recovery, and we didn't get it. And we're seeing exactly the same thing now. We're embracing austerity when what we need is investment. And I can't believe that we didn't learn the lessons of 2008, 2009 of the Great Recession. So there are parallels, and they're stark. And I can't believe that we have such short memories that we can't remember how slow the recovery was. I mean, that's the real peril. If we have a recovery that is, a swoosh, elongated, that means that people are suffering. Those are numbers, but those are also people. They are families. They are farms. There are small businesses, people waiting on this kind of relief. So I'm ashamed to say that history is repeating itself, and it wasn't that long ago.
Well, Professor Cook, earlier COVID stimulus packages were sold as helping individuals and making investments in small businesses. Didn't those earlier packages actually accomplish what lawmakers had hoped?
They did to a certain extent. Certainly, the emergency stimulus embedded in unemployment benefits, that was a big boost for American workers and for American families. The checks that went out to individuals and to households, that had certainly had an effect. For PPP, certainly there were a lot of small businesses that participated in it, and they stayed afloat, and that's a good thing. But as you know, many businesses have closed permanently. 60% of the restaurants, roughly 60% of the restaurants listed on Yelp, have closed permanently. So we are in a situation where these small businesses need more relief. There is more money sitting in the PPP waiting to be used. And those small businesses that didn't have access the first time around need to be targeted the second time around, and they don't need to be loans. They need to be grants so that these businesses stay alive. And they're not just businesses. These are often people's dreams. And due to no fault of their own, they are sitting on the sidelines, not being productive, not employing workers, not doing what they were meant to do with their resources. And they're certainly not being the pillars of the community that many small businesses are. So that could have been deployed better. I think in between now and the next crisis, we have to work on making sure that SBA and the Treasury can get out money faster to people. I think that absolutely has to be at the top of the list. And going back to automatic stabilizers, hopefully there won't have to be this kind of wrangling about a package, and a lot of it will be just automatic, so that it's immediate. There's immediate relief to families, and it doesn't depend on political party. It doesn't depend on partisanship.
All right, Professor Lisa Cook, thank you.
Thank you.